Thank you, everybody. It's been moved by Councillor Kelly Galloway Seelock that the minutes of the regular meeting held January 25th, 2016, and special meetings held January 18th and 25th and February 8th, 2016, is mailed to the mayor and councillors be accepted. All in favor? Opposed? That's carried. Are there any disclosures of pecuniary interest? None, and there's no communications to refer to files, so we'll go into our presentations. And to begin with, we wanted to take a few moments to recognize some staff and community members who've been involved with two awards that the Region of Waterloo applied for, but that involve the City of Kitchener, and that we received at the 2016 Sustainable Community Awards that FCM hosted last week. The first award is for Best Brownfield Project, and I'll maybe just ask the staff and the community members here to stand up, and that would be Rob Morgan, Capital Investment Advisor, Brownfield Coordinator, Garrett Stevenson, File Planner, Janine Oosterveld, Manager of Site Development and Customer Service, Tim Benedict, Manager of Building and his Building Plans Exam Team, Jennifer Young, Plans Examiner, Rod Regier, Executive Director of Economic Development, Terry Boudelier, former staff who was instrumental in developing our Brownfields program, and I'll touch on that momentarily. And then not able to be here tonight according to my list, but if you are, please stand up. Sandro Bassanis from Planning, Leon Bensasson from Planning and Heritage, Barry Cronkite from Transportation, Eric Reich from Engineering, Bev Grant Campbell from Legal, and of course Craig Beattie and David Gibson from Perimeter Development Corporation. So I think on this project, so thank you to, first of all, to all of you for your role in making this project come to fruition. The Best Brownfield project that we received was for the Bright Up Block project. It recognized work that was done many moons ago by Terry Boudelier in terms of putting our brownfield TIF into place. But we know that in those early years, the TIF wasn't as successful as it could have been until the region came on board for their portion of the TIF as well. And that certainly started making these projects much more viable, and brought us to a situation where all of these individuals, along with others in Planning, Committee of Adjustment, Heritage Kitchener, and Council, were able to see this project come to fruition. That ultimately has culminated in it being a very successive adaptive reuse of an old manufacturing building, and one that's been recognized now nationally by FCM. So thank you to all of you for your role, and maybe I can ask Colin to pass that award around to Council. Oh, and actually, while it's passing around, there is a video to watch on that award, so I'll ask him to turn that first one on.
Bright Up Block is really the poster child, or one of the poster children in this region, of a whole lot of policies that are coming together. It's right next to where our transit hub is going to be, and identifying and redeveloping these sites along the core is a critical piece of the action.
We were really known as an industrial city for the better part of the 20th century. And as a result of that, as some of our buildings are being converted into new modern day uses, we're having to address brownfield issues.
The Region of Waterloo is helping developers to identify brownfields, to use the programs that we have in place to remediate sites and make them productive and contribute to the community.
The property is a little bit over 4 acres in total. From a location standpoint, this was as good as you get. Basically in the center of Waterloo region, this was actually rubber manufacturing. And then that evolved into automotive parts. Environmental issues with the property scared a lot of people away.
We have 3 products in our Brownfield financial incentive programs. One is a Phase 2 environmental site assessment grant. We have a brownfield regional development charge exemption and a joint tax increment grant with our area municipalities.
It really goes a long way to taking these projects and making them financially viable and returning these buildings back, and not only to their former glory, but really to a new glory like we're seeing in the Bright Up block.
It'll be a fabulous combination of some really great salvaged buildings here and a first-class LEED Gold building at the front.
We have the School of Pharmacy, the medical school, we have Google locating there, a lot of high-tech industries there, a lot of commercial operations. In addition, we have condominium development.
What gets us up every day is being a part of getting this community and neighborhood around here reinvigorated.
This is the kind of thing that really can happen when you redevelop brownfield sites, when you bring transportation and transit together and create a really livable, developable, and economically viable center core part of the city.
So once again, thank you to all of the staff and the private sector partners who helped make this project a reality. So congratulations. So there were a total of 9 Sustainable Community Awards that were given out that evening, and so the fact that our region was able to attain 2 of them, I think, speak volumes about the commitment of this region to issues of sustainability and the great staff teams and community partners that we have in making these awards happen. So the second award, and I'll ask these individuals to stand up, was the Sustainable Communities Award for Energy Plans for our Climate Action Plan, which, as you know, is a joint effort between all of the municipalities in the region, our various hydro and gas utilities, car share, bike share, REAP, Sustainable Waterloo Region, and I think that's the core group, and then a lot of other community groups that are involved in partnering with them. And the people from a staff and community perspective who are here this evening, Brandon Sloan, our Manager of Long Range and Policy Planning, Carrie Musselman, our Senior Environmental Planner, Wally Malcolm, our Director of Utilities, David Roade, Sustainability Specialist, Community Planning at the Region of Waterloo, Sarah Brown, who was the lead and managed the preparation of the plan. She was at the time with Sustainable Waterloo Region, but now is at U of W. Dave Blake, who's the REAP Energy Manager on behalf of REAP Green Solutions. Liz Hilgers from Climate Action Waterloo Region, team member on behalf of Sustainable Waterloo Region. And I know there's 3 members of the volunteer team, I believe, that are here with Liz. Awesome, more than 3. Great. And Stacey Dankert, the chair of our Environment Committee. Thanks, Stacey. And not able to be here tonight was Josh Joseph, who was our TDM coordinator at the time, but is now our engagement coordinator for the city. And all of these are task force members, along with 20 other interest groups and stakeholders. So a shout out to anybody else associated with this action plan. If you're not standing and we're part of it, please stand up and be acknowledged. And I just want to thank everyone for the work that's been done in getting that plan together. It obviously, this is going to be an important year because it's the year where we see how we're doing halfway through and report back to the community, and then see where we go from there for the other half of the term of the initiative. Also want to acknowledge our city's planning division, who were involved in funding the first phase of the inventory work, and council. You'll recall that we've also agreed, as the other municipalities have, to the ongoing implementation of the plan. So, Colin, if we can. Thank you to all of you. If you want to take a seat, and we'll watch the video on that one. And maybe pass that award around as well.
It's not surprising that Climate Action Plan has got so much acceptance here. It's been a work of love for many people.
Waterloo Region prides itself on being a hub for innovation. Why not look for innovative ways to reduce our impact?
We're taking action both in terms of the region's official plan and the city's plans.
So we've had a history of working together to, in sort of an umbrella way, trying to get everybody to work towards common goals, and I think that played a strong role in doing this.
It started with Sustainable Waterloo Region with a study that they commissioned from a group of students. And they invited REIT to join them.
I was doing our corporate greenhouse gas inventory, and they said, do you think this is something that you can help us move forward?
Dave was right on board with this and really saw the benefit of having us involved, as well as the benefit of getting all the cities together on this.
They had all committed to the Federation of Canadian Municipalities Partners for Climate Protection Program. We agreed for a community action plan, it would be less confusing to the community if we had one reduction target. The Green Municipal Fund was critical. It enabled us to hire a full-time project coordinator for the 2-year period it took to develop the plan to reduce our emissions by 6% of 2010 levels by the year 2020. The action plan looked at over 100 different actions, and we established task force for each of the emission sources, so residential, industrial, commercial, institutional, energy use, transportation, waste, and agriculture. And we prioritized them based on the criteria of what could be implemented within 2010 to 2020, what will reduce emissions from the sectors we looked at, and what has the support of local community.
We learned that 40% of the carbon footprint here in Waterloo Region comes from transportation. Things like the LRT, the ION, are aimed at reducing that.
And homeowners who followed our recommendations are collectively saving 23,000 tons of greenhouse gas emissions every year.
Being good for the environment is also good for business.
These actions, when implemented, will add $350 million value to our local economy, provide 5,400 person work hours during the 10-year period, and provide savings to households and businesses of about $21 million.
It's a learning experience for all of us. We share what we have and we can learn what others are doing.
And so with that, a round of applause and thanks to all the staff and community partners that helped make this happen. So thank you everyone for joining us this evening, especially those who are volunteers and those who are retirees and spent many years at the city and came back for this acknowledgement. Really appreciate you taking the time. Thank you very much. And you're free to stay for the rest of council if you're so inclined, but we won't be offended if you might decide to go for a beverage of your choice or something else. Okay, so with that, we'll go into our delegations, and our first delegation is Trudy Bohm from the Social Development Centre of Waterloo Region. Welcome, Trudy, and I'll remind delegations that they have 5 minutes to make their presentations.
And let it begin. Thank you for doing this. I appreciate the opportunity to come and meet with you again, Mayor Verbenevik, councillors, staff, and members of the community that are still here. I'm here tonight representing the Visitable Housing Task Force, which is one of 6 that have been working the last 2.5 years across Canada in a project coordinated by the Canadian Centre on Disability Studies in Winnipeg. And the purpose of the project is to raise awareness and commitment to building visitable housing. So what I'll do tonight is I'm going to introduce the work that we've done. We want to invite Council in the City of Kitchener to take a lead in ensuring that visible housing is built in Kitchener. And we want to invite Council staff and community members to attend a March 23rd community forum and workshop to begin to delve more deeply into some of these discussions about what to do next. I have a handout that includes a report that we've recently completed on the regulatory and technical requirements related to building accessible housing, visible housing. And there's a copy of a handout, which is a variation of the PowerPoint. It's got a little bit more information in your handout. So what is visible housing? Visible housing is a housing that's built, when it's built at the outset, with one no-step entrance to the main level, wider doorways and hallways on that main level, and at minimum a half bath on that main level can be used by somebody with a mobility aid. The no-step entrance, here's some examples of some housing built in Winnipeg. There's no steps to get into that home, wider doorways and hallways, and washrooms with a turning radius that's suitable for people who are using assistive devices. Visible housing is a minimum standard of housing. It ensures the home can be visited by friends and family who have mobility limitations. It doesn't define all possible accessibility features. What's shown here in the picture is what we call our accessibility design spectrum. That goes from visible housing, 3 main features, adaptable housing that has components that make it possible to renovate your housing more easily, and then accessibility housing. There's an earlier document resource that we've created. You actually have copies of it that will be talked about more at the forum. That stairs are a really major issue, and the one feature of visible housing through the research that we've done is the no-step access. There's a lot of issues that people have raised questions about and concerns about with respect to how do you build housing with a no-step entrance. And the other features like wider hallways and main floor bathroom are really becoming standard in many of the homes that are built. So it's much less of an issue to put those features into a housing. Stairs generally can be unsafe, and stairs make a challenge for a lot of people for a lot of different things. They may look nice, but they really aren't cost-effective in the long term. So some of the challenges that were identified by staff, and we had 3 City of Kitchener staff participate in October at a forum, Janice Osterveld, Mike Sealing, and Trevor Oakley. And Trevor also participated in a follow-up workshop we held in November. And we listened to the issues. We did some additional research, and you see the work done there. And we talked to builders in Canada and the US. And what we learned is it's possible. The policies we have, the regulations that we have, do not preclude being able to build visible housing, except that we do find that there's an uncertainty as to how to do it. So that key challenge, and we have some costs that we've pulled together that are included in there. And basically, builders have told us that it's possible to add those features without increasing the cost of the house. Doesn't mean it doesn't have a cost attached, just that it can still do it. Your official plan supports building a wide range of housing to meet needs, but the reality of our situation is that it's not really encouraged, and we want to make sure that people are encouraged to do it now. Our request is to recognize visible housing as a standard and to include stronger language in your official plan, to develop specific guidelines, and to be a front runner. Encourage developers who are now in progress or soon to be building developments to actually include visible housing in their housing designs. Ask the region to take a lead and join our community forum and workshop on March the 23rd so that we can discuss these in greater detail.
Thank you very much, Trudy. And we have one question for you, Councillor Fernandez.
Thanks, Trudy. Interesting title to visitable housing, because the connotation would mean that it opens the doors for everybody to enter, which I think is what you're trying to indicate. So if I'm looking at a greenfield site, for example, or even an infill site, do you see that there is a certain percentage of those houses or that infill that should be visitable housing?
Well, at a minimum, yes. But the ideal is there's no housing built without those features. As soon as we put a stair in, we cannot invite people to come into our home who have a challenge. And people who have that experience now will say they see stairs, and the message is they're not welcome. So that is our ideal as a standard. We have some work to do before we get there, but it's not impossible.
Yeah. Oh, how is this different from the whole OADA regulations that are now available or standard procedure in every building?
Well, the AODA standards for built environment doesn't include residential. The building code does have, we were happy to influence a little bit, and there is a requirement for visitable suites, 15% visitable suites in all apartments with more than 3 floors. So the building code is starting to include it. We've asked for some stronger statement for a wider range of housing.
So you talked about our official plan and that you thought we needed to use stronger language, and I think I saw you used examples of our official plan on page 6 of your report.
Yes.
Did you add the language in here, or are those that you've just identified the policies?
No, we haven't, because we are visiting all the municipalities and reviewed all of the official plans, and we see that the vision in the official plans includes the diverse kinds of housing to meet accessibility needs. Where the gap becomes is in being really clear about visible as being a basic standard we'd like to achieve, and we did not want to make the change in all of the official plans because it was a lot more work than what we had the time to do. But also, the biggest one is to create the guidelines to help make it possible for people to actually build. Because the guidelines, the engineering guidelines, tend to move away from that. They don't provide the basic information, and there needs to be some work done there. So the vision is a good start. Strengthen the language so that that can be there, and we certainly could work with you to do that, but we weren't presumptuous enough to actually rewrite the preambles and the official plans for the 8 municipalities. Okay.
My last question is about the fact that you've seen the push to intensification, and that's all part of the new provincial policy statement and smart growth and all that. Do you see this as a bigger challenge now because of that push for intensification?
To a great extent.
Okay.
That's where, certainly at the provincial level, the vision of intensification and growth and the vision of accessibility and inclusion could potentially be conflicting unless there are really careful about the rules and regulations all the way down, the remedies, the design and the engineering that needs to be done. Because in general, we've not found it to be impossible to build these features in on any size lot, but to be quite honest, an infill housing on a smaller lot is a lot more of a challenge than, compare a 26-foot wide lot to a 3-acre property. It's much easier to do that when you have full control over grading and siting of the building. So it is more challenging, but not impossible. Okay. So that's why I think we should have all of our rules and regulations and guidelines working together to make it easier for people to do it, and where possible, to put in incentives as well.
Well, and as our population ages, we really do have to make it more accessible for the residential people, for people to move into residences that are like that. Thank you.
Thank you.
Councillor Marsh.
Thank you, Trudy, for coming in and presenting to us about this. Just for the benefit of the public watching this meeting, I wonder if you could tell us the details of your meeting on Wednesday, March 23rd at Rim Park. What time is that meeting at?
Right now we're still finalizing the details, but we're hoping it will start by 10 a.m. and that the morning will be a panel presentation with representatives from Winnipeg, from CMHC, from other local players to talk about the various aspects as to why visible housing is a good idea and is feasible. Mm-hmm. And then we will have a workshop where different stakeholder groups will meet and work together on the particular issues that have been identified as their thing. And we're really hoping that we will have more of the builders, developers, real estate professionals, planners, and decision makers like yourself participate and tackle some of these issues about changing the language in the official plan, working towards having a more common standard that I know you don't have the legal clout to enforce it, but you can certainly encourage it and use stronger language to provide ways and means to make it more possible for it to happen. So it's at Rim Park in, I can't remember the name of the room, it's the bigger room, and it will be open to anybody that wants to come, but we are really, really focusing on regulators and builders for that session.
Okay, thank you.
Great. Thanks, Councillor Yanetsky. Go ahead.
Thank you. Just following up on Councillor Fernandez's questioning and basically just looking at the development of new housing over the last 10 years or more, especially with the intensification in the urban area where you get housing being built on smaller lots, the garages in the front, they got stairs, and you got 2-3 stories. And what I see, and that also takes place in new subdivisions as well. And basically, it's the developer or the builder who's trying to make as much profit, make it as best as possible to utilize the land and get as many units in there. And by doing that, you compact it, put the units, the garages in the front of the parking, put the stairs in, build 2-3 stories high, and make it totally really inaccessible for your needs. Have you been working with the industry, the building industry, in any way to convince them? Because they're looking at the dollar signs, yet you're looking at the accessibility component, and the two aren't compatible in any ways. How do you address that with the building industry?
Well, we start with working with where the interest is. There are some very progressive builders and developers that are keen to try these things. There are builders in other jurisdictions, some that we've talked to, who won't build any other kind of housing because they just have come to the point where they strongly believe it's the way to go, it's the best thing to do. So you're absolutely right. That is the one area where it is really difficult, but it doesn't mean it's impossible. And really, we've been talking to a lot of builders locally who have an interest in doing it. It's a matter of pulling it into their process. We'd really like there to be a local development, a pilot that could be showcased. And we're hoping the municipalities might start to vie for who wants to do it first, because there is a potential to get a lot of profile. And there are awards. You could win an award that they were established this past year for this kind of accessible housing. I think it's something that we're 100 years too late to actually have it affect the housing stock. But as it was part of the presentation, the best time to build visible housing was 100 years ago. The second best time is now. And if all new housing is built with those features, it would make a really big difference for the people who live in those homes and the people who are their friends, neighbors, and relatives.
Well, I wish you good luck in terms of your success in achieving your goals.
Thank you.
Councillor Singh.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor. I think it's commendable for you having to brought this forward to highlight a greater diversity of the housing stocks that needs to be in the marketplace. Just from the earlier comments and through questions, I just want to quickly state that we can't paint with a broad brush as to the size of development of lot sizes. It's not confined to infill development only. Smaller lots exist in our greenfield development as well. And that's more reasons other than just the profits for the developer. These are lot sizes that the municipality allows because infill development helps to better strategically plan for services for the city as well as mitigating costs. So when we're trying to balance those two needs, one thing that you touched through as well, you saying that sometimes this can be spurred or visitable homes in designing them could be stimulated through incentives. Did you have any incentives in mind that you guys have looked at or other municipalities across the country have had greater success with?
I don't know the details of them, but I know in Vancouver and Ottawa there have been some partnerships And I think that's been the largest kind of thing that we've seen, where in Manitoba, the province actually led the development, the province of Manitoba, and the city of Winnipeg participated, so everybody kind of worked together to make this development happen. And they have the first large-scale Canadian development with visible housing in Bridgewater. There's actually, you have to look at your own video here. There's a QR code and a link to a video that showcases that particular development. CMHC, we've talked to them about possibly having some dollar incentives to go into a pilot project. As for what you might have as part of your toolkit, that depends on what you may want to do, the usual things like development charges, taxes, whatever that could sweeten the pot to encourage somebody to at least have a pilot and possibly an incentive to encourage that kind of building.
And some of this demand will be filled up with the industry itself seeing a greater population that's in later years of their life and having more demand for structures that are more visitable. So do you see the building community starting to have greater interest now in hearing all this?
I think generally there is an interest in meeting the needs of that particular demographic, but we see it as being much more broadly applicable to the entire lifespan, not just for older adults. But there is going to be a surge. We know with realtors, we've been working with the Realty Association. We created a guide for realtors that they've incorporated into their MLS system so that they can actually identify whether a house or
so this is starting to happen slowly, but starting to happen. It's slowly
happening, yeah. We've come to you late in the game because when we first went to regional council about 7 or 8 years ago, it was a good idea. Now we're trying to figure out what are the realities, the technical challenges, so that we dot the I's and cross the T's. And we're bringing something that's a more fully developed, more than just a concept.
Good.
It's very doable.
Good.
Councillor Galloway-Seelock.
Yeah, mine's more really just a comment. I appreciate you bringing this work forward to us and doing this and presenting it. Accessibility has always been important to me, and I've sat on GRAC for a number of years on council, and my previous job prior to being on council was with adults with developmental disabilities, so it's definitely an area I'm interested in. And I can also tell you that from canvassing thousands of homes over 3 elections, that I've come across one home in Ward 5 that has no steps. And those are the ones you remember, because in every other home you have to climb up the steps to ring the doorbell. So I've come across one home. And also being the ward councillor that has the largest greenfield still to be developed, I'd be happy to work with you to try and see if we can get an area going in Ward 5 to see if we can get a pilot going with some
Much appreciated.
So I'll connect with you after.
Thank you.
Great. Trudy, that's it for the questions, except I have one. I know one of the groups that we have here at the city is the Kitchener Liaison Committee, which I believe is chaired by our head of building, Mike Sealing, and it meets with people in the building industry on a regular basis. And in listening to your presentation, one of the things that seems to me would make sense is to try to get them on board, because ultimately they're the ones that need to be convinced that there's a market for this. And that they should pursue it. If we could work with Mike to get you on the agenda of one of those meetings to talk to the group, would you be willing to do that?
We'd be quite happy to.
Okay, yes. Great.
And also issue an invitation for them to participate in the forum and workshop, because that would start the conversation with some.
Wonderful.
So happy.
Awesome. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Okay, we'll. There we go. We'll now move on to, we have one other delegation who's just here, if necessary, to speak to Committee of the Whole Agenda Item number 2 sub 1, which is the sign variance for 135 Highland Road West. And that is Mr. Trevor Gagne. Trevor, did you want to say anything, or did you just want to be here to answer any questions? Okay, so let's see if we can make that happen fairly quickly for you. Does somebody want to move that? Moved by Councillor Fernandez, seconded by Councillor Ioannidis. Any discussion? All those in favor? Opposed? That's carried. It's all done. Thank you. Okay, so we'll now move on to the tenders, and if I can just remind council that questions on tenders are focused around the process of the tender, not on debating decisions that were already made around the various issues that we're dealing with. Councillor Schneider. You want to move them? Okay, Councillor Galloway-Seelock has moved them all. Councillor Schneider.
Yeah, thank you, Mayor Vervanovic. Just a question in regards to the Battler Road Storage Consultant Services. We received only one response to our expressions of interest. The deadline was January 15th. When was the expression of interest posted?
Ms. Palmer-Novakovic.
Sorry, bear with me just
Sorry.
1 second, Mr. Mayor. That's okay. Through you, Mr. Mayor, we post our expressions of interest for 15 days, so it would have been a minimum of 15 days prior to the closing date.
Okay. Now, do you have any concerns at all about a fair and competitive price with only one response received?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, we did some reach out to some of the other plan takers to inquire why there was only one bid on this project. We did receive some response, and we heard things like resources, timing of project, etc. We believe it is within budget and expected, so we believe that there is value in the.
Okay, and I appreciate too that we've worked with this company before, and there's history and there's other reasons to go in besides price. I just wanted to make sure that you felt it was a fair and competitive price, even with one. Thank you.
Okay, and just before I go to the remaining questions, I presume are on this one. On that report, on page 1I-3, there was a 2 missing in line C, estimated cost, so it didn't carry down from line A. So line A was 264, 361, 44. Line C should read 264, 361, 44, just so that everyone's aware of that. Councillor Fernandez, I presume your questions on this?
Yes, it is.
Okay, go ahead.
Can you tell me what we paid the MT consultants for the first phase of this project? They were the consultants for the research and the public engagement, I believe.
Mr. Chapman.
Through Mr. Mayor, I believe that information was provided previously to council. I don't have that with me at my fingertips.
Okay, because I was looking for it in all the material I had, and I looked at the September 21st report that we received, and what I have seen is that we originally had a $2,216,500 budget, and then, but I'm seeing now that we have a $2,257,000, so it's gone up for the total budget for this project, and I wondered what was the difference, what had happened.
I can't comment on that. This would be the number based on the council-approved budget for 2016. As I've said, I believe operations staff did provide council with an email that summarized the cost incurred to date when that was requested previously, but we don't have that at our fingertips here tonight.
Mr. Chapman, would that number adjustment partially be the inflationary amount that you add onto capital projects from year to year?
It could be. I'd have to go back and take a look.
Okay.
Okay, if you could you refresh me in an email then tomorrow on that? Thank you.
Be happy to.
The other concern I have is the comments about the consultant with expertise in the area of snow storage. To be quite frank, when I spoke with staff earlier in the process and asked questions about this consultant having expertise in snow disposal sites, they said that the MTE has not had any expertise in this. So I'm a little bit concerned that we're going with a consultant at this point in time before approvals by the Ministry of the Environment and Climate Change that don't have any expertise in this. So what would happen if we were to not approve this tender at this time? How long is the tender valid for?
Ms. Palmer-Novakovic?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, I'll start with the first portion of the question and then can adjust from there. So in terms of expertise, from the file, the rating scores, they did have past experience in demonstration of design excellence and project effectiveness. They did receive, I would say, quite a high mark in that category. In terms of how long do we have to award the expression of interest, there is an expectation that we would award within the 60-day period from the submission.
Okay, so you said the closing date was Friday, January 15th, but going 15 days back, that they would not have submitted, I would imagine, on the 1st of January, since that was a holiday. You said that they would have submitted.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, the open period, which is the period when any plan taker can submit a bid, is for 15 days from the time that we post until the time that we close.
So from 15 days?
That's the open period.
So I think the question she's getting at, that Councillor Fernandez is getting at, you would have then posted it on December 30th or 31st, likely because of the holiday, correct?
Correct, but I can verify and provide the exact date it was posted if that would help.
I'm just concerned that, did others have that time frame with which to bid on the same project?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, within the report, I believe we detailed a number of plan takers. There were 8 interested parties that downloaded the document.
Yep, I did note that. Okay. I have a lot of discomfort with approving this, especially because they are already the consultant on the first phase of this project. It makes me feel very uncomfortable, and it looks a little bit, I don't know exactly what the proper word would be, but it just makes me feel uncomfortable. So unfortunately, I won't be able to support this at this time.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Marsh?
Question about the third one.
The third one? Okay, any other questions on the first one? No? Any questions on the second one? Any questions on the third one? Councillor Marsh?
Okay, so this is just a question about the purchase of the software, the recreation management software. My understanding is that we're going to be seeing a much smoother, less clunky online platform for registering for recreation programs, yes?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, that is correct.
Okay, and so with the increased technology fee that we are going to be incurring on top of the cost, the capital costs, can you help us understand if there are going to be any, what type of cost savings we're going to be having by paying for the technology fee? Are they going to be taking on tasks that our city staff would have otherwise had to do?
So through you, Mr. Mayor, I'll draw your attention to page 3 of the report, the second last paragraph, just to detail some of them. So some of those savings would be in staff time for performing upgrades, managing the service request calls around that, and ensuring the PCI compliance, which is where they do additional assessing.
Yeah, and do you have any dollar figures attached to those savings at this point?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, I don't. I'm not sure that it will be a direct savings. As staff, I would assume would be reallocated to other tasks, but.
Oh, yeah. I'm not assuming that we're going to be losing staff as a result, but I'm just wondering if you had any dollar figures attached to things like purchasing servers and PinPad hardware, etc. But if not, then perhaps later, if there are figures for us to understand that there's not a total of $82,000 a year that we're going to be paying on top of what we currently would be paying.
Mr. Chapman?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, we can take the question back between now and council to see if there are some estimates that are even available. But yes, your point is correct. There will be savings here. We can quantify those over time. But if we can provide a better estimate for next week, we'll endeavor to do that.
Well, this is council, right? So,
Yes, you're right.
So that's fine. I'm not going to hold up the tender. I'm happy to support it. I think it's going to be great, especially the fact that we have Sorry, I'm getting into comments, so I'll leave it. But I have no question about this. I just wanted to, for the sake of the public, I'd like to see that we're not incurring the whole cost. I'd like to see us how we're offsetting that cost.
So I think the next point to have that discussion will be in the budget process, as noted here through the 2017 budget. This will be an add, and so the interesting question will be, is it $82,000 or is it something less than that because of the savings that offset it?
Yeah, exactly. Thank you.
Okay, Councillor Fernandez.
Yeah, I'm just looking at the project line of budget. It says temporary staff, $50,000. Can we have a better understanding what that means?
Mr. Wilmer?
Through the mayor, the staff that is assigned to administering the class system is being reassigned to prepare for this project, and so we need to backfill that person.
Okay, I guess I'm thinking similar to what Councillor Marsh is saying is that we should be seeing some savings, not necessarily an additional staff person to do the work. I would have thought that the people who are doing the work now would continue doing the work in cooperation with the Active Network software.
So through the mayor again, just to be clear, this is a one-time 6-month period when we're doubling up on the staff in order to implement the new system. We're continuing on with class while we're getting ready to implement the new system. So during that time, we're seconding our permanent staff and backfilling them.
Okay. In the last paragraph on page 3, it talks about the annual $56,000 fee compared for technology fee if the city was entering into the agreement on its own. Would that be $56,000 for all of the city? Because it says we're talking about the City of Kitchener, Township of Wilmot, Township of Wellesley, and the City of Cambridge. Would each of them have had to pay that technology fee if each city was entering into this separately?
So through the mayor, yes. If each was doing it separately, each would have its own fee. Because we're doing it collaboratively, Kitchener's savings is $56,000. The other municipalities would have their own savings on top of that.
Okay, thank you.
Councillor Galloway-Seelock?
Yeah, having experienced some of the difficulties with class when the system goes down or is at capacity, would one of the savings not be internal resources that we currently use in order to man phones, because that's a backup way to register on the days where capacity is filled?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, you are correct.
So that's one concrete way that we'll have savings, that they can continue to do their regular duty as opposed to being seconded to that during high peak volumes throughout the year. I'm seeing nods. Okay. I just thought I'd help with one example of what would be cost savings, even though it's not necessarily a dollar amount, it's just resource savings.
Yep. Any questions on item number 4? Okay, if not, then 1 to 4 have been moved by Councillor Galloway-Seelock. Is there a seconder? You want a recorded vote on the first one? Okay, seconded by Councillor Ioannidis. Thank you. So we'll deal with number 1 first, and a recorded vote for that one. All those in favor? All those opposed? That's carried. The balance of the tenders, all those in favor? Opposed? That too is carried. We'll now move on to committee reports. And I will turn it over to Councillor Galloway-Seelock. Committee reports. No worries.
So it's been moved by myself and seconded by Councillor Dave Snyder that all items 1 through 15 from Community Infrastructure Services be approved.
Okay. questions? Councillor Marsh?
Just want to comment that number 13 was deferred to today, and I'm sorry. Yes, that parking be prohibited on the east side of Union Street from Beamer Street to Lancaster Street West. So what we want to do, the whole thing was deferred, and now I've had a chance to talk to some of the residents, including the person who came forward to our committee meeting, and have come to the conclusion that we need to go with the staff's recommendation because that is the majority of the people living in the affected block with the retaining walls. So I'd like to put forward a motion that we, or just to support that motion right now, that we go with staff's recommendation.
Okay, so that is the motion that's on the floor right now, so I'll just acknowledge your comments as being supportive of that. Any other questions or comments on community and infrastructure services? If not, all those in favor? Opposed? That's carried. Finance and Corporate Services, Councillor Davey.
Thank you. It's been moved by myself and seconded by Councillor Marsh that items 1 and 2 in Finance and Corporate Services Committee be adopted.
Okay. All those in favor? Opposed? That's carried. Planning and Strategic Initiatives, Councillor Singh.
Thank you. It's moved by myself and Councillor Ioannidis that the items located in Planning and Strategic Initiatives Committee from 1 till 3 and be adopted.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Fernandez.
Yes, recognizing that I wasn't here last week for the item number 1 on the fireworks and firecrackers, just a question, and I'm not sure who would be able to answer this, but as we open up the opportunity for other groups to have fireworks, my understanding is the bylaw is the day before. So, for example, on Victoria Day, the day before the holiday and the day after, we are allowed to have fireworks. Is that correct? Anybody?
That's, I mean, my recollection, I'll jump in, and my recollection is that that is correct, and Diwali, I think, is, if I remember correctly from the report from a couple weeks ago, Diwali is over a period of a few days, so it would presumably be a day before it starts to a day after. I think it's a 3-day period or something.
So would we be looking at fireworks every single day of that festival, or just one day of that festival? And the reason I'm bringing this up is I've seen in my ward a real expansion of fireworks. As much as I love them, I look at the environmental impact of all the smoke and the particulate matter that's going up in the air. We hear about that from people who have backyard fires. If we're going to be looking at 3 days of fireworks in a specific area, I would be a little bit concerned about the impact on people who have respiratory problems. Can anybody speak to that?
Mr. Wilmer?
Through the Mayor, if I recall, the essence of the presentation that was made a couple weeks ago at committee was for the flexibility to undertake fireworks in a celebratory manner. I think it is really it seems to me that for a given community, it will be a one-day event, but there's flexibility as to exactly when during that festival they choose to have the fireworks.
Okay. So I guess my question is, how will we sort of monitor this event, that we don't end up having like 3 consecutive days of fireworks, for example, that they do have it on the specific day, whether it's the ending of the festival or the beginning of the festival, so that we're not ending up with this amount of air pollution 3 days in a row in a small, concentrated neighborhood.
So through the Mayor, I think you've hit on exactly the right word, is monitoring, that I think we take some comfort in knowing we're not the first community to open up our regulations to allow this, and other communities that have allowed it have not experienced significant problems.
Okay, all right. So we will be keeping an eye on this. At least we'll hear from bylaw then if something transpires then.
Yes, we will.
Okay, thank you.
Councillor Etherington?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, I just want to point out that knowing the cost of fireworks, that's a deterrent And secondly, that I don't think anyone intends to have what is being painted by Councillor Fernandez, that he's going to have 3 days of fireworks. You may have fireworks for a limited amount of time on each of those 3 days, but the way it's being painted here, it's like we're going to have non-stop fireworks for 3 days. That's just not the case.
Councillor Schneider.
Thank you, Mayor Bravanovic. I just did a quick Google of Diwali because in the presentation I was certain that the children were saying it was a specific night. It was the darkest night of the year, and the intention was to bring light to the darkest night of the year. And it says that Diwali is a festival of lights observed on the 15th day of the month of Kartika in the Hindu calendar. And for 2016, that will happen on October 30th. So it is one night, so I don't believe that we'll have to concern ourselves with any other night than that. And from the delegation, the presentation, it was a very positive celebration and a great tradition for them to celebrate here and us to partake in as well.
Great. Thank you for that information, Councillor Schneider. Councillor Fernandez, you have additional questions?
Yeah, no, I just wanted to thank Councillor Schneider for that clarification so that, my concerns probably are put aside for that.
Okay, thank you. So it has been moved and seconded. All those in favor? Opposed? That's carried. Okay, we'll move on to item number 9, new business. Oh, sorry, unfinished business. Sorry? Yeah, we did. That was all of planning. No, there was all moved. The whole report was moved. No, just like we do with all the reports. Unfinished business? New business. Councillor Fernandez.
Thank you. So I brought this motion tonight before us as working in partnership with numerous other municipalities. It originated at the municipality of the City of Aurora, and a number of councillors there, Councillor Maracas and Councillor Michael Thompson, all of a sudden his last name escapes me as I just call him Mike, have brought forward this motion, a similar motion, to their council in an effort to take some of the sting and some of the threat of the OMB that we constantly hear coming to council. What we're hoping to do, and we have another steering committee meeting on March the 5th, and certainly any other members of council are welcome to join me to attend. We're working towards a summit day in May, at which time we will have a variety of speakers, and AMO is very interested in participating in this, as well as some regional housing commissioners, and a wide variety of parties are also interested in participating in the summit. And what our end goal, we hope to be, is that we will look at presenting to AMO in August a way for municipalities to deal with OMB appeals, and specifically around ones that are challenging official plans. Because, as we well know, our staff and the staff of the region and in many municipalities worked long and hard creating our official plans. And without a doubt, to see them being challenged again and again and again by the development industry, and then only to be upheld oftentimes at the OMB, is very taxing on our staff resources and very taxing on tax dollars. It's so much to saying that the last regional official plan that was challenged at the OMB cost hundreds of thousands of dollars. So we're not talking about being anti-development. We're certainly inviting the development industry to the summit. It's just, I think, I'd like to receive support from council to be a participant in this summit process, and to be a participant at AMO in August, if that's how far that this is going to go. Aurora Township has unanimously supported this, has a number of other municipalities are presenting it to their council. So Markham and Newmarket, Cambridge is being presented with this as well. So I really think that it's an important step in the right direction to try and reduce our costs and implement our official plans.
Okay, maybe just some clarification, Councillor Fernandez, because you just indicated in your comments that the purpose of the motion is to get agreement for your participation in the summit and the AMO conference. Both of those are things that you can already attend as a member of council as part of your allotment of conferences. And none of that's in the motion, actually, that's before us. There's 4 other clauses there, so I just want to be clear on what you're actually asking for.
I'm not actually asking to be an attendee at AMO. What I'm trying to explain to council is what the end goal is the hope for this collaboration between, right now we're looking at between 20 and 30 municipalities who are planning on being part of this summit day of conversation with the development industry, with planners, with different agencies, with AMO representing themselves as well. So it's really just, I just really wanted to give a little bit more background in case there were any further questions from council about what I'm asking here. I'm really just asking for support.
Okay. And you're moving that. Is there a seconder? Councillor Yanutsky seconding that? Okay. I have several people with questions. You had another question or comment? Oh. Okay. Councillor Singh?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. I do have some questions of the motion. It's just the way it's written. The whereas clauses does give some description as to the reason for bringing this forward, and I don't disagree that sometimes it can be frustrating with the way the Planning Act is, but the way the clauses are, and for therefore be it resolved, especially where it says that the government interior be requested to limit the jurisdiction of the OMB to questions of law or process, and then the following one, that the government of interior be requested to require the OMB to uphold any planning decisions of municipal councils unless they are contrary to the processes of the rules and set out by the legislation. That's exactly what the OMB does with that clause especially. So I'm not sure where we're getting with reiterating what the OMB is there for, but with the earlier clause about limiting their jurisdiction, if you can elaborate a little bit more as well.
Councillor Fernandez?
So I get, maybe I haven't explained what the rationale for all of this is it started with a situation in Aurora with a golf course, and how the development proceeded. It went from being a golf course, similar to what's happening in Cambridge right now with Saginaw Golf Course. The challenge is that there's a significant change to the land use of that golf course to now development, and the change and the possibility and the likelihood actually that this will go to the OMB. In discussions with Councillor Marakis and at our first steering committee, what we talked about was how to work with the development industry, how to work with planning and planners in general, so that we can avoid taxing our staff with OMB hearings, how we can avoid the amount of cost that every OMB hearing costs a municipality, especially when it's challenging an official plan that our staff has worked on for many, many years. So what we're trying to do is work together collaboratively to figure out how we can avoid having that OMB appeal threat hanging over our heads all the time.
Yes, I understand that, but any persons or bodies has the right to appeal that this one decision under the planning is a planning matter, outside of other decisions that this council takes. So how can we limit that right? And on top of it, when it comes to cost, any erroneous appeals or appeals that are lost, again, we have the ability to seek out costs afterwards as well. I know it can be time and resource consuming, but when we are in the right, we can go after costs as well. But when we may not have the right interpretation, or when a decision may be politicized, that's why that decision is there, to allow those persons or bodies to make that appeal.
Mm-hmm. And I don't disagree with you, Councillor Singh. I think really it's just an effort for, this is not something that I've taken the lead on. This is taken the lead on by a number of different municipalities. It was an invitation extended to all of council by a letter from Councillor Marakis. It's just that I made myself available. I think that this is it's just a really good opportunity to work together as municipalities in cooperation with AMO. And I'm not sure if we will be able to fulfill all of the therefores and the resolves. I just think that it's a great opportunity for us to see and investigate and research our ability to maybe reduce some of the OMB bills that municipalities are spending a tremendous amount of time and energy on.
Councillor Galloway-Seelock.
Yeah, I guess a lot of mine's comment because of what I'm hearing. There's a lot of directives in here. Is this purely just coming from Aurora? Or is this actual direction that you're looking to give to the province? Because that's the way the motion's written.
Councillor Fernandez.
Well, I worked with Mr. Goodeve on this motion. It is not, and I apologize, I did forget to bring the motion from Councillor Marakis in Aurora. It's a combination of a variety of motions that have been drafted both by Aurora and Markham and Newmarket and Cambridge and all of the members that were there that day. I think in working with Mr. Goodeve, this best reflected what Aurora had in theirs. And so I agreed with Mr. Goodeve that I thought this was a good reflection of what Aurora was bringing. Theirs was a little bit more detailed, even more so than this, and even more directive than this is. So I was trying to keep it as open-ended as possible.
But what you're asking us to approve is completely different than what's on this paper. You're asking us to approve direction to the Ontario government for planning decisions, questions of law and process, and yet you keep saying that you want to participate in a summit day to meet with developers. You want to do it to avoid costs, to work together collaboratively with developers. But that's not what this motion says at all.
Well, I'm sorry if there's a misunderstanding there, but that, like I said, this I was working with other municipalities and councillors who have written out very similar motions, and my understanding that this covered. I mean, if we talk about it being very directive, I think it is important for a municipality. This is not the first time we've had a motion before us that is directive or asks the provincial government and members of Parliament to take a stand or to support something that a municipality is doing. And I think that is the essence of what this is. If it doesn't appear to be that way, I want to assure you that that is exactly what we're intending. And if you wish, I can certainly go and get the other motion.
I'm not worried about the other motion, but if your intent is to pass this motion, I would request that it gets referred to staff before we would approve this motion, but I have no problem saying participate in the summit to work collaboratively with other municipalities and developers. I have no problem with saying that, but if this is the motion that you want passed, I would have to ask it to be referred to staff so that we can get comment from them before we were to move forward with this.
Okay. Councillor Ioannidis.
Yeah, just a little more clarification, because you're out from Councillor Fernandez, because you're kind of asking for direction before the summit. So I don't understand the rationale of that. Like, wouldn't you think the summit's going to bring out some answers and some conclusions, and then you would draft a motion instead of coming with a motion before?
Councillor Fernandez.
I guess I was only taking the lead from what other municipalities were doing, and they were proceeding with motions to their councils beforehand, and I was really just following their lead. If there's discomfort by some council members about how this was drafted, I'm sorry that you're uncomfortable about this. I think that it's very important as a municipality who has spent hundreds of thousands of dollars in OMB appeals, along with our partner, the region, that we look at ways to do something different and something better. So, I'm only asking for your support, and if that's not what you wish to give, then I can't convince you any further than that.
Okay, again, as reiterate what Councillor Galloway-Sillock says, none of that reflects in the motion that you have written here, what you're saying right now. So, as the way it stands right now, I can't support it.
Councillor Etherington.
Comment, Mr. Mayor, is that okay?
Sure.
Well, I'm not confused on this. I think the motion is quite clear. Although it makes me think of Don Quixote tilting at windmills, I see nothing wrong with Kitchener Council expressing dismay at the questionable power given to the OMB. And it reminds me of the widespread municipal frustration about the provincial arbitration process. Well, there's nothing wrong with us protesting and screaming about the unsustainability and unfairness of that process. I don't kid myself that we're going to have any impact on it with any motion from this council. I think we all know that there's very little chance of changing a situation that is so vital in way of votes to Liberal or Conservative governments. I'm talking about police and fire, but anyway, I'm getting away from the subject. I support Councillor Fernandez's motion and commend her for making this effort and for tilting at the OMB windmills. I wish her luck, but I don't think it's going to have very much impact.
Okay, I have one question maybe of staff. With respect, okay, I'll wait to ask my question. Councillor Davey?
Oh, sorry, I was going to make a comment.
Oh, comment, okay, then I'll come back to you. Just on the first two paragraphs that are referenced in the motion, the two be it resolved, how is that, and I guess either Ms. McDonald or Mr. Wilmer, how is that different than what the OMB does right now? Mr. Wilmer, first one to buzz in.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I think it's very different from what the OMB does now. This is saying that the OMB would be involved only when there's a question about the process and the application of law. That is almost never the case. We always follow the right process to get to a decision. What the OMB deals with is differences of opinion, when they've got expert opinion on either side of an issue as to whether it constitutes good planning, whether it complies with policy. And there will be opinions on both sides of that. So really, everything that the OMB does now has little or nothing to do with the process and everything to do with weighing different opinions and making a decision.
Okay. So I guess then maybe my question to you, Councillor Fernandez, is if the intent, as you say, is to sit down with developers and others involved in the building industry and to have a dialogue that's, trying to learn from each other and see how we can change the system to make it better, is it perhaps premature and starting to tilt the conversation in one direction before you've even had that dialogue?
No, I don't think so. I think that there's nothing wrong with starting the process and starting the steps towards making a clear indication, as we have with the arbitration process, that we're not happy with the way things are right now. And if out of the summit, and depending on what municipalities attend and what their struggles have been and who else is invited, and we're really in the infancy stages of this summit, and there's a lot of excitement and a lot of energy happening around this. I think it's okay to start with the message and then continue working forward with all of the partners that we are hoping will attend.
Okay. I think there may be some differences of opinion on that, because I think part of the challenge is, if we want to have a meaningful dialogue with someone, if you sort of draw the line in the sand before you sit down with the other party to have that meaningful dialogue, it I think can shape the conversation in a way that isn't helpful towards perhaps a collaborative solution. And that's the risk that we run. There's no question in my mind, and I'll make my comments now. There's no question in my mind that there are some issues with the OMB and that they need to be fixed, and there needs to be some additional emphasis put on community desire. But there also needs to be a legitimate process where people can appeal, because NIMBYism kicks in, politics and populist politics kicks in, and decisions get made around a council chamber that aren't necessarily good planning. And sometimes you need that independent body. And so I think it's important to have that dialogue, which I'm totally supportive of, so that we can see where those reforms should happen, as opposed to just saying that it should be limited to questions of law. I don't think any of us have done that research yet to know that should be our position. Councillor Davey?
Thank you.
Oh, sorry. Can you click in again? I turned the wrong one off. Go ahead.
Thank you. I was going to just echo some comments that I agree there's definitely some dialogue that should happen with the OMB. And I also agree with much of what Councillor Fernandez said. And again, but to be clear, a lot of what's actually written before us in the motion puts some very hard lines on things that we haven't had enough discussion about. As you pointed out, Mr. Mayor, the reality is there are two extreme scenarios that the OMB has to deal with, and that's occasionally there are developers that are, I will say, overly ambitious, let's say, in terms of their planning and disregard the needs of the community and the official plan, and that's what the OMB is there for. But to be 100% fair, there's an equally difficult factor in that, and that's in local councillors who will respond to even as few as 2 and 3 emails, and go against something that's been planned for and is good and strong planning. And the OMB is there to find the balance in that. I will also point out that my understanding is, on average, the OMB finds in favor of municipalities more than the developers, even though the history is, or the rhetoric is in the opposite of that. So I would agree 100% we need to have a discussion and try and find ways to rein that in, because I do believe that both sides are wasting money. But I do think it's very important work. It's very important work this body does, and limiting it without having that full discussion, I think, would cause more harm than good.
Okay, Councillor Marsh.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just a question and a comment. Question of the clerk. If this motion were to fail, if after discussion at the summit and the AMO conference, if there were a similar motion to come forward regarding the OMB, worded differently but similar in nature, would that be an accepted as a new motion?
Through the Mayor, the procedure bylaw states about motions for reconsideration are required if a motion is deemed not to be substantially different from the previous motion. So as long as the chair or mayor deems that a new motion that's written to be substantially different, then a motion to reconsider would not be required.
Okay, thank you. So I'm not going to fully reiterate the comments made by Councillor Davey and Mayor Verbanovic, because I do fully agree with them. I also want to just applaud Councillor Fernandez for her initiative, and I think that absolutely, Councillor, your heart is in the right place, and you have really good direction towards dialogue and opening dialogue to make the process better and to ultimately save our municipality money should we be successful in encouraging a bit of a tightening of how the OMB operates. But the wording of this motion is just not there yet. And so that's why I can't support it in its current form, but I will be happy to work with you post-summit and post-AMO conference to look at bringing forward a new motion regarding the OMB.
Councillor Galloway-Sealock.
Yeah, I was just going to formally ask for a deferral and a referral, if you're allowed to do that. Deferral until after the summit, and referral that when it does come back, that we do have some input from staff with regards to whatever potential motion could come out of this. I do support Councillor Fernandez in continuing the work. I think it is something that needs to be done. I'm just concerned that it's premature because of the wording of the motion and the directives that are very firm in that motion. So I would formally request a deferral until after the summit and after AMO.
Okay.
The AMO conference, I should say.
Before I take the deferral, which would take precedence, I'll go back to Councillor Fernandez. And maybe just before I do that, Councillor Fernandez, maybe I'll ask just one question of staff if I can, because it might be helpful to this whole issue. Where do we have any sense of where the whole issue of OMB review might be sitting with the provincial government right now? I know they're doing a review of the Municipal Act. Is this part of it, or this is more of the Planning Act, so would it, is this even in the cards right now?
Through the Mayor, we do have indications from the province that they do plan to open up for stakeholder engagement considerations around OMB process or matters relating to reviewing the powers of the OMB and its processes. Don't know exactly when that would happen, but the indications are sometime within the next couple of years.
Okay. So it's likely the summit that Councillor Fernandez referenced would probably happen before any review or before we're asked for input into any formal input into a review.
Yes, that's right. The summit would inform probably what happens at the province over the next couple of years.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Fernandez.
Yes, just to your question about that, I have received an email from the Commissioner of Planning, Development and Legislative Services at the region, and he is presently participating in this summit, as well as participating in some review of the OMB, as far as my conversations with him have been in the past. Additionally, I would be willing to make a couple of amendments before we go to a discussion about a deferral to soften the language with regard to be requested to limit the jurisdiction. So I'm looking for a word to be requested to consider the jurisdiction of the OMB to question of laws and process. Maybe consider is not the right word, and if my great wordsmith, Mr. Goody, can help me there, as well as in the second paragraph, that the government of Ontario be requested to, instead of require, a softer word there. So be requested to request the OMB to uphold any planning decisions. So softening the wording a little bit, it would be my hope that it would be a little bit more palatable to council. So if those two words were removed, I would be interested to see if that would help expedite and move this motion along.
Councillor Galloway-Seelock, you were going to move the motion to defer, so I'll turn to you first.
At this point, I don't think that I can support it. I think from the perspective of we need to have the discussions before we bring forward a motion of this nature, I'd be more than happy if we crafted a motion that says we, at the City of Kitchener, encourage members of council to continue to sit on the summit and participate in the OMB, so that it shows our support in continuing the dialogue. So I'm just going to wait because this is...
Did you need something, Councillor Fernandez?
Yeah, I'm just asked the page to grab the Aurora
Actually,
motion.
the clerk has it on the screen if we...
The Aurora
if
motion?
we need it. Yep.
Okay.
I don't... As the the motion of the deferral, I'm still concerned about making a statement, A, without having staff input, and B, that the discussions are just beginning, and I think it's important for us to be around the table to continue to work on the discussion, and I believe that we'll be able to make a stance from the City of Kitchener's perspective when that summit in AMO happens. And I would look forward to that motion, but at this point in time, I think it's really important to continue through the process without passing a motion that is this prescriptive moving forward. So that is, as the mover of the deferral, I would still encourage the deferral to occur until such time as the summit is complete. But I'd be more than happy to support a motion, as I've stated before, that the City of Kitchener fully wants to participate in the summit in AMO moving forward with respect to the discussions around the Ontario Municipal Board.
Okay, I'm going to go to Councillor Yanetsky next, and then Councillor Marsh for a second time. Councillor Fernandez, it's up to you. I mean, at this point, if your motion stays on the floor, the deferral will take precedent. But if you, I mean, another option that you would have would be to withdraw it at this point. And I'm happy to sit down with you between now and council to come up with a wording that, well, next council rather, when it might be one that might be more acceptable to both your intent and I think what we're hearing from other members of council. So think about that, and we'll go to Councillor Yanetsky and Marsh and then come back to you. Councillor Yanetsky.
Yes, thank you. During my career, I've been involved in many OMB hearings, and I know basically the process and intent and how the Planning Act works in terms of law, good and bad planning, judgments, opinions, considerations of zoning, regulations, official plan policies. It's a whole gamut of factors that are taken into consideration. And I know people have their positions in terms of whether they're for an application or against it, and whether the municipality supports it or does not support it. There's different components of it. I understand where Councillor Fernandez is coming from, because I've been following the Aurora case as well as the one in Cambridge with the golf courses, and they're trying to address issues in terms of how to address it through the planning process. I know where Councillor Fernandez is coming from, but I do have some reservations, to some degree when I look at the exact wording, and I think knowing that this is a scenario that basically would require a revamping of the Planning Act somewhere along the way, it's a bigger tiger to tackle than what I think is anticipated here. I think Mr. Wilmer was right that we'll be looking at something in the next couple of years that the government may be reviewing it and getting various stakeholders and government agencies and legal people involved in terms of, I wouldn't say tightening it, but addressing it in terms of how to move forward on this. So I would be prepared at this point in time, having considered all this, that I think maybe we should wait for, defer this, I'm not too sure to when, so that this can be further reviewed, and the wording has to be modified to reflect what the objectives are of this Aurora situation, and how they are proceeding on that. And I don't think there's an urgency on this, but I'm going to leave that open-ended to Councillor Fernandez to put a date if she wants to put one on there. So I would support a deferral at this point in time. Councillor Marsh.
Yeah, I don't see the rush either, so I concur with Councillor Yanetsky's comments.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Fernandez, before I come back to you, I think we will have to deal with the deferral next, because the motion has been duly moved and seconded, so it actually does belong to council as a whole now to deal with it, and it can't be withdrawn at this point. The motion can't be withdrawn at this point because it's been duly moved and seconded, and I accepted that motion, so it belongs to the council floor at this point in time. Councillor Fernandez.
I have only one last comment left, and that was item number 3 in the agenda, disclosure of pecuniary interest in general nature thereof. We have some councillors sitting around the table who presently have development interests that could go to the OMB. They should be recusing themselves from voting.
Councillor Fernandez, I caution you to be making comments like that. I don't think they're appropriate, number one. And number two, this is about a procedure, which is an issue that we would have as an interest in common, that every citizen, that you as a property owner could go to the OMB as well as a property owner and could appeal something to the OMB. So I would caution you to be making defamatory statements of that nature. With that, Councillor Galloway-Seelock, your motion of deferral. Your motion of deferral until?
I don't know the date because it's whenever the summit in AMO, so I'm guessing September some point because I believe AMO's in August, so I'm going to suggest September sometime.
Through the mayor, the AMO conference is scheduled for August 14th to the 17th.
And what's like a later committee day in September? Just to give some time for staff to review.
Through the mayor, that'll be September 12th.
Is there not a later one?
The next one after that is October 3rd.
Still probably lots of time.
We'll go with October 3rd. If it's ready before then, I would say bring it before then, but I'll just say October 3rd to give everyone enough
October
time.
3rd or earlier?
Yeah.
Okay, everybody's clear on the deferral? Okay. Oh, sorry, thank you. Need a seconder for the deferral? Councillor Ioannidis, any discussion on the date? No? Okay, recorded vote has been called. All those in favor? All those opposed? That is carried. Okay. Nothing to add from the region today. Questions and answers? Bylaws, first reading. There are a couple, well, actually we'll deal with, there's a couple of late starters, so I'll ask staff to bring those forward.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, we have 2 late starter bylaws, both zone changes, one having to do with 1333 Weber Street East and one having to do with 547 New Dundee Road.
Okay, thank you. It's been moved by Councillor Etherington, seconded by Councillor Fernandez, that leave be given the mover and seconder to introduce the bylaws, including the additions listed on the agenda, and that the same be taken as read a first time and stand referred to the Committee of the Whole. All those in favor? Opposed? That's carried. We'll now move into Committee of the Whole. Councillor Galloway-Seelock.
Yes, can I have a mover for the second reading of the bylaws? Moved by Councillor Ioannidis. All in favor? I need a couple more hands. All in favor?
Folks.
There's 4 people not voting right now, so all in favor of the second, thank you. Opposed, that's carried. We've dealt with number 1 and 2A. Sorry.
Dealt with all of 2.
We dealt with all of 2. My apologies. So we're on number 3, applications for cancellation refund of taxes, moved by Councillor Ioannidis. I don't see any questions. All in favor? Opposed? That's carried. We'll now move to number 4, which is the tag day request, moved by Councillor Davey. Any questions? All in favor? Opposed? That's carried. I believe item number 5 is being requested for deferral. Is that correct? Yes. So do we want to have someone defer that? I can't remember. Councillor Fernandez, was there a timing on that, Colin, specifically, or do we need to?
Through the mayor, the deferral will be to the April 25th dog designation committee day.
Perfect. Noted. Any questions? All in favor? Opposed? That's carried. We then have the summary of the CAO approved tenders.
So moved.
Moved by Mayor Vervanovic. Any questions? All in favor? Opposed? That's carried. Now, number 7, appointments of the Cycling and Trails Advisory Committee. Moved by Councillor Fernandez. Appears as though we have a question from Councillor Marsh.
Just a comment. I want to commend the nominating committee for doing a great job of selecting the 4 candidates. I also want to just ask that staff look at what's happening with this committee, because we've had quite a bit of attrition over the last year and a bit, and it'd be good to maybe get a better handle on that rather than just seeing more and more attrition. Maybe it's just a coincidence that so many people had to leave for good reason, but just a comment.
Okay. Councillor Fernandez.
I can actually speak to that, Councillor Marsh. A number of people have had jobs that have moved them out of the area. It's just coincidence.
Okay, so that's been moved by Councillor Fernandez. All in favor? Opposed? That's carried. Number 8 is the transfer of the Walter Bean Trail funds from the Grand River Conservation Foundation. Moved by Councillor Davey. We have 2,
Councillor Schneider and then Fernandez.
Yeah, just a question on this report. It says the city assumes ownership and responsibility for information kiosks. What's the annual cost of this? Do we know or have an idea?
Leslie.
Ms. McDonald?
I'm aware that we've agreed to take over the kiosks. I don't have the cost of that, but as I understand it, the kiosks have been there for a number of years, and a lot of them are now due for some retrofit. But there is an expectation that those funds can be used towards fixing those kiosks as well as constructing any other portion of the Walter Bean Trail.
Okay, thank you.
Councillor Fernandez?
Yeah, I sent an email to Ms. Fletcher regarding this because there was no amount that was in this report. And so the funding was $248,000 intended to use over the next 5 years. My concern is with the wording in the financial implications where it said where appropriate, as well as these funds to be maintained the kiosks. So I'm glad that they're doing the kiosks, but my comment to Ms. Fletcher was it's a little bit ambiguous. I've had numerous emails and phone calls over the last couple of years about the Walter Bean Trail, about where that money is going and why it hasn't been used. And I believe there was even a record report on what's going on with the Walter Bean Trail. So I want to make sure that the funds that were raised by the foundation remain for only the Walter Bean Trail extension and rehabilitation of the kiosks, that money does not get frittered away to other trail projects. How can we make sure that that's going to happen?
Leslie and Jeff.
Ms. McDonald?
Yes, I can tell you that through the agreement, the agreement is very explicit that the funds are to be only used for the Walter Bean Trail and any of the related accessories such as the kiosks. And in fact, it replicates the objectives of the Walter Bean Trail Foundation. And it's very clear it can only be used for those purposes. And a report has to be filed once a year back to the foundation to explain exactly how any funds have been spent.
So that's the guarantee that this phrase, where appropriate, really should not be in the financial implications. It should be funds to expand and promote the Walter Bean Trail, as well as using the funds to maintain the kiosk. Where appropriate shouldn't be even in there if we've already have an agreement that says funds only to be used on the Walter Bean Trail.
That's correct.
So my question is, how do we get those 2 words out of that?
I think it's just a matter of the way that way you're reading it. It says the benefit those funds to expand and promote the Walter Bean Trail where appropriate, as in like where appropriate along that trail, those funds will be used, as opposed to like it's got the Walter Bean Trail right in front of it, right? So I think your concerns are being noted. I think Leslie is saying that it's addressed in the agreement. and that we have to report back yearly. Mr. Wolmer, did you want something to add?
Through you, Madam Chair, I think that we can take comfort from the recommendation here, which will be the resolution of council, and it says the funds are intended for the completion of the Walter Bean Trail in Kitchener. So it makes no reference to any other trails. And that'll be the resolution of council.
Okay. Okay, there's no more questions. It's been moved. All in favor? Opposed? That's carried. We have 2 late starters. We only have 2, right, Clerk?
Through you, Madam Chair, yes, we have 2 late starter items arising out of caucus this state. One with respect to IATSE collective agreement, and a second one concerning the purchase of 155 Woolner Trail.
Thank you very much. We will deal with the IATSE agreement first. Moved by Councillor Ioannidis. Is there any questions? All in favor? Opposed? That's carried. And next we will deal with the acquisition of 155 Woolner Trail. Moved by Councillor Ioannidis. Are there any questions? All in favor? Opposed? That's carried.
Move that the committee rise and report. All in favor.
All in favor? Opposed? That's carried. It's been moved by myself and seconded by Councillor Etherington that the proceedings and the recorded pecuniary interests and conflicts taken in the meeting of the Committee of Whole held this date as attached hereto and forming part of these minutes are hereby adopted and confirmed.
All in favor? Opposed? That's carried. It's been moved by Councillor Etherington, seconded by Councillor Fernandez, that the bylaws, including the late starters, listed on the agenda for third reading be taken as read a third time, be finally passed and numbered serially by the clerk. All in favor? Opposed? That's carried. It's been moved by Councillor Schneider that we now adjourn. All in favor? Opposed? That's carried.